The darkness of space held many secrets, and Fleet Commander Threxkel believed he knew most of them. His 8 warships moved through the void like hunting predators, their hulls painted in the deep crimson of the Krylothy Dominion. They had been waiting for 3 days in the Helios expanse, engines cold, sensors passive. Invisible to anyone passing through this remote corner of space. Threx single quotes, Cal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the crimson fang, his forearms crossed in satisfaction. His scales rippled with anticipation, changing from deep purple to excited orange. In his 2 centuries of service to the Dominion, he had overseen the submission of 4 different species. The pattern was always the same. Find an isolated ship, demonstrate overwhelming force, offer terms of surrender, and watch as fear did the rest of the work. The Krylothy way of war was simple and effective. They did not waste resources destroying enemies when those enemies could be made to serve. 17 star systems now flew the Dominion banner, their populations working to feed the Empire's endless hunger for expansion. 17 species had learned that resistance brought only death, while submission brought survival. "Commander," his sensor officer hissed, her tail twitching with excitement, "we have detected a vessel entering the sector. Configuration matches the human database. It appears to be a merchant ship, alone and unarmed." Threxkel's mandibles clicked together in what passed for a Krylothy. Smile. Humans. The newest species to stumble into the galactic community. Barely 200 years past their first crude warp drive. Intelligence reports suggested they were curious and optimistic, spreading outward from their small yellow star like children exploring a new home. They had established colonies on a dozen worlds, built trade stations, and sent peaceful greetings to every species they encountered. Perfect prey. "Move the fleet into position," Threxkel ordered. "Standard ambush formation. I want that ship in a perfect kill box. Power up weapons but hold fire. Let them see what they face." The Krylothy warships came alive, their engines burning hot as they broke from their hiding positions behind a dead moon. They moved with practiced precision, forming a sphere around the approaching human vessel. Each warship was 3 times the size of the human ship, bristling with plasma cannons and missile batteries. The message was clear and overwhelming. The human ship, designated Wandering Star according to the transponder signal, slowed as it detected the Krylothy vessels. It did not run. Threxkel found that curious but not alarming. Shock often paralyzed prey animals in the moment before death. Perhaps humans were no different. "Open a communication channel," Threxkel commanded. "Let us introduce ourselves to these newcomers." The viewscreen flickered to life and translation protocols engaged. The image showed a human bridge, smaller and more cramped than Krylothy designs. The human standing at the center was female, with dark skin and hair pulled back in a functional style. She wore a simple uniform, blue and gray, with no ornate decorations. Her face remained calm as she studied the Krylothy commander. "I am Fleet Commander Threxkel of the Krylothy Dominion," he announced, his voice carrying the weight of authority that had broken the will of countless others. "You have entered Dominion space without permission. Your vessel is surrounded and outmatched. You have no possibility of escape or victory. I offer you the standard terms. Surrender your ship immediately, submit to interrogation, and accept the authority of the Dominion. Your species will be contacted and offered the opportunity to join the great empire peacefully. Refuse and you will be destroyed. You have 60 seconds to respond." He expected panic. He expected desperate pleas for mercy or furious defiance born of ignorance. He had seen both reactions 1,000 times. What he did not expect was the long, heavy silence that followed. The human captain, her nameplate reading Vasquez, stared at him with dark eyes that seemed to measure and calculate. Her crew moved quietly in the background, but there was no chaos, no shouting, no fear that Threxkel could detect. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, she spoke. "You've made a terrible mistake," Captain Vasquez said, her voice steady and cold. "This is your only chance to withdraw." Threxkel's scales flickered through confusion before settling into amused yellow. His officers chittered with laughter. The human was threatening them? With what? Sensors showed no weapons on that vessel. No hidden missile batteries, no energy signatures of charging cannons. Just a cargo ship with standard engines and basic shields. Your bravery is noted but foolish, Threxco replied, his amusement clear. Perhaps you do not understand your situation. Allow me to clarify. He gestured to his weapons officer. Fire a warning shot. Show them what they face. One of the Krylithy warships opened fire. A bolt of superheated plasma streaking across the bow of the wandering star. The shot was deliberately wide, close enough to light up their sensors, but far enough to avoid actual damage. It was a demonstration, a taste of the destruction that awaited Defiance. The human ship did not react with panic. Instead, something unexpected happened. The wandering star began broadcasting on all frequencies, a wide-spectrum emergency signal that cut through the void like a beacon. Captain Vasquez's face remained emotionless as she transmitted coordinates, tactical data, and the precise position of every Krylithy vessel in the formation. What is she doing? Threxco demanded. Who is she calling? Jam that transmission immediately. His communications officer worked frantically, but the human signal was strong and multi-layered, designed to punch through interference. Commander, we are attempting to block it, but their transmission protocols are more sophisticated than expected. They are broadcasting to the entire sector. Threxco felt the first whisper of unease. So what? Any human reinforcements are days away. By the time help arrives, this ship will be in our possession, and we will be gone. He turned back to the view screen. Captain Vasquez, your distress signal is meaningless. Surrender now, or we will disable your ship and take you by force. This is your final warning. The human captain's expression did not change. If anything, she looked almost sad. You were warned, she said quietly. What happens next is your choice, not mine. Threxco opened his mouth to give the order to disable the human ship's engines when his sensor officer made a sound of alarm that sent ice through his veins. It was not a sound of surprise or confusion. It was a sound of pure fear. Commander! She shrieked, all four of her hands dancing across her console. I am detecting multiple energy signatures appearing at the edge of the system. Massive power readings? They are not coming from warp space. They are just appearing. The main view screen shifted automatically, showing the tactical display. Threxco's hearts, all three of them, seemed to stop beating at once. Space itself was rippling, distorting, as reality bent around points of impossible energy. 12 contacts materialized on the sensors, each one burning with power signatures that dwarfed anything in the Krylithy fleet. 12 human warships phased into existence, surrounding the Krylithy formation like hunters who had just revealed themselves to trapped prey. They were sleek and predatory, smaller than the Krylithy vessels, but radiating energy that made them look like miniature stars. Their hulls were dark gray, almost black, with no markings except for simple numbers and the flag of Earth. The Krylithy fleet, the hunters, had become the hunted. Threxco stared at the tactical display, his mind struggling to process what his eyes were showing him. 12 human warships had appeared from nowhere, materializing in perfect formation around his fleet. Not from warp space, which would have given his sensors warning. Not from any jump technology he knew. They had simply phased into reality, as if they had been there all along, invisible and waiting. How is this possible? He whispered, his voice barely audible over the sudden chaos on his bridge. Officers were shouting, checking and rechecking their instruments, convinced their sensors had malfunctioned. But the readings were consistent. The human ships were real, and they were very, very dangerous. The power signatures coming from those vessels made no sense. Each one generated more energy than his entire fleet combined. Their shields were already active, shimmering barriers that registered as nearly impenetrable on Krylithy sensors. And the weapons? Threxco could see weapon ports opening along their hulls, revealing systems he could not identify or classify. All ships battle stations? Threxco commanded, forcing authority back into his voice. Raise shields to maximum. Charge all weapons. Prepare for combat. His fleet responded with trained efficiency, their warships pivoting to face the nearest human vessels, energy barriers flickering to life around their hulls. But even as his ships prepared for battle, Threxkel felt something he had not experienced in decades: fear. The communication channel crackled to life again, but this time it was not Captain Vasquez's face on the screen. Instead, a human male appeared, older than Vasquez, with gray hair cut military short and eyes that held the weight of command. His uniform was more formal, decorated with medals and rank insignia that suggested high authority. Behind him, Threxkel could see a bridge far more advanced than the simple merchant vessel, filled with tactical displays and crew working with quiet efficiency. "Fleet Commander Threxkel," the human said, his voice carrying a cold edge that sent chills down Threxkel's spine. "I am Admiral Marcus Chun of the Human Defense Fleet. You are surrounded and outgunned. Power down your weapons immediately and prepare to be boarded." Threxkel's mandibles spread in defiant anger. "You dare? This is Dominion space. You have no authority here. We are the ones who surrounded your vessel. We offered terms of surrender." Admiral Chun's expression did not change. "Yes, you did. And we thank you for that. You see, Commander, the Wandering Star is not exactly what it appears to be. Oh, it can carry cargo, and Captain Vasquez is indeed a merchant marine officer. But that ship's hold contains the most advanced sensor and communication package humanity has ever built. For the past 6 months, it has been traveling through contested space, mapping systems, recording everything, and waiting for what?" Threxkel demanded, though a terrible understanding was already forming in his mind. "Waiting for someone like you," Chun replied. "We needed to understand how aggressive species operate in this region of space. We needed to see your tactics, your protocols, your approach to first contact. We needed proof of hostile intent. You've provided all of that and more. Every word you spoke has been recorded. Every threat you made has been documented. And now, Commander, you're going to help us send a message to your Dominion." Threxkel felt his scales turn pale gray, the cryolithy color of shock. It had been a trap. An elaborate, patient trap that had taken months to spring. The humans had sacrificed their own ship as bait, risking their own people, all to gather intelligence and justification for what was about to happen. "Your species has been watching us?" Threxkel asked, his voice hollow. "For years," Chun confirmed. "We know about the 17 systems you've conquered. We know about the species you've enslaved. We know your tactics and your strategies. Earth's government has been debating how to respond to the Cryolithy Dominion's expansion toward human space. Some argued for diplomacy. Others wanted to establish defenses and wait. But we needed proof that you were a threat. We needed evidence that could justify our response to the galactic community." Threxkel's tactical mind was racing. The humans had been studying them, learning from them, preparing for them. This was not a chance encounter. This was a carefully orchestrated operation, and he had walked directly into it. "What do you want?" he asked, forcing the words out. "The same thing you offered Captain Vasquez," Admiral Chun said. "Unconditional surrender? Power down your weapons. Disable your engines. Prepare to be boarded. Your crew will not be harmed if you comply. Resist, and you will be destroyed." Pride and anger surged through Threxkel. The Cryolithy were warriors. They had conquered 17 civilizations. They did not surrender to prey animals who had barely learned to leave their homeworld. "You have 12 ships," he growled. "We have 8. Perhaps we are outmatched, but we will not surrender without a fight. The Dominion does not bow to threats." Admiral Chun's eyes hardened. "Then you've chosen obliteration. All human ships you are authorized to engage. Standard protocols. Disable if possible, destroy if necessary. Show them what we're capable of." The communication cut off, leaving Threxkel staring at a blank screen. For a heartbeat, everything was silent. Then his tactical officer screamed a warning, and the universe exploded into violence. The human ships opened fire, and Threxkel realized immediately that everything he knew about space combat was obsolete. The weapons they used were nothing like conventional energy beams or missiles. Instead, space itself seemed to bend and fold around his ships. 3 of his warships simply collapsed inward, their hulls crumpling like paper as gravity distorted around them. Shields that had withstood centuries of cryothy warfare offered no protection at all. "Return fire!" Threxkel roared. All batteries full power. His fleet responded, plasma cannons and missile launchers unleashing their fury at the human vessels. The attack should have overwhelmed the enemy shields, should have forced them back or at least damaged them. Instead, the human point defense systems activated, and Threxkel watched in horror as every single missile was intercepted and destroyed before reaching their targets. The plasma bolts struck the human shields and simply dissipated, absorbed by energy barriers far beyond anything the Dominion possessed. 2 more cryothy ships died in the next volley, torn apart by weapons that seemed to target specific weak points with impossible precision. Another warship lost its engines, left drifting and helpless in space. The battle had been joined for less than a minute, and Threxkel had already lost more than half his fleet. "Retreat!" he ordered, his voice breaking. "All ships emergency warp. Get us out of here." But the human ships were faster. They vanished from their positions and reappeared directly in the path of fleeing cryothy vessels, cutting off every escape route. It was the same technology they had used to arrive, some kind of instantaneous movement within the system that made traditional tactical thinking meaningless. There was nowhere to run. Threxkel's flagship shuddered as weapons fire struck it, but the humans were deliberately targeting engines and weapon systems, leaving life support and crew sections intact. His ship went dark, power failing, emergency lights casting everything in red. Around him, his officers sat in stunned silence, watching as the rest of the fleet was systematically dismantled. In 93 seconds, it was over. 7 cryothy warships floated dead in space, their crews alive but helpless. The 8th ship, the Morning Talon, had attempted to ram a human vessel in a final act of desperation. The humans had simply phased out of its path and destroyed it with a single shot. Admiral Chun's voice returned to the communication system, calm and professional. "Fleet Commander Threxkel, you are defeated. Prepare to receive boarding parties. Your wounded will be treated. Your survivors will be returned home. And you will deliver a message to your Dominion. This is not the beginning of a war. This is a warning. Stay away from human space or face obliteration." The docking clamps sealed against the Crimson Fang with a metallic clang that echoed through the dead ship. Threxkel stood in what remained of his bridge, surrounded by injured officers and the flickering light of dying systems. His scales had turned the dull gray of defeat, and his heart beat with a rhythm he had not felt since his youth. When he first learned what it meant to lose, the airlock opened and human soldiers entered the ship. They moved with precise coordination, weapons held ready but not aimed directly at the cryothy crew. Threxkel had expected execution squads or torture teams, the kinds of things he had witnessed from other aggressive species. What he saw instead confused him. Behind the soldiers came medics carrying equipment and supplies. They moved immediately to the wounded cryothy, scanning them with portable devices and administering treatment without hesitation. One of Threxkel's officers, his second-in-command Kelrith, had taken shrapnel when a console exploded. The human medics stabilized her injuries within minutes. Their medicine far more advanced than cryothy standards. Admiral Chun entered last, flanked by 2 guards but walking with the confidence of someone who had already won. He was shorter than Threxkel, as all humans seemed to be, but there was something in his presence that commanded respect. The admiral surveyed the bridge, taking in the damage and the defeated crew, before his eyes settled on the cryothy commander. "Fleet Commander Threxkel," Chun said, his voice neutral and professional. "Your crew will be transferred to one of your disabled ships that we've restored basic life support to. You will come with me. We have much to discuss." Threxkel wanted to refuse, to maintain some shred of dignity, but what would be the point? His fleet was destroyed. His crew was at the mercy of these humans. Defiance would only bring more suffering to those who served under him. "As you command," he said bitterly. The words tasting like poison. He followed Admiral Chun through the corridors of his own ship, seeing human soldiers posted at every intersection, seeing more medics working on his wounded crew. The humans were treating their prisoners with a level of care that seemed almost insulting. Why show mercy to an enemy you had so completely defeated? They entered a shuttle that took them to one of the human warships, the vessel designated Resolution. As they docked and entered the human vessel, Threxkull was struck by how different everything was. Krylithy ships were built for intimidation, with sharp angles and crimson lighting that reminded everyone aboard that they served an empire of conquest. Human ships were functional and clean, with soft white lighting and corridors that felt almost comfortable. There were no trophies from conquered species, no displays of military might, just efficiency and purpose. Admiral Chun led him to a conference room and gestured to a chair that had been modified for Krylithy physiology. "Sit," Chun said. "Your wounds need attention." Threxkull touched his side, where a piece of metal had cut through his scales during the battle. He had forgotten about it in the shock of defeat. A human medic appeared, treating the wound with quick efficiency before leaving them alone. Once they were seated across from each other, Chun activated a holographic display between them. "I want you to understand your situation completely," the Admiral said. "What you're about to see is classified military information. I'm sharing it with you because you need to carry a very specific message back to your Dominion, and that message needs to be believed." The hologram showed a star map of known space. Krylithy territory was marked in red, a vast expanse covering hundreds of systems. Human space was much smaller, colored blue, clustered around Earth and extending outward in a growing sphere. But as Chen manipulated the display, new information appeared. Fleet positions, ship counts, defensive installations. "The force that defeated your fleet represents 0.3% of human naval power," Chun said, letting that sink in. 12 ships. We have 4,000 warships of similar or greater capability. We have defense platforms around every colony world. We have weapons you haven't seen yet, technologies that would make today's battle look gentle. And all of it was built in the past 50 years. Threxkull stared at the numbers, his mind refusing to accept them. "Impossible. Your species has only been in space for 2 centuries. How could you build such a force?" "Because we had to," Chun replied simply. "Humanity spent thousands of years fighting itself. We had world wars that killed hundreds of millions. We developed nuclear weapons that could have destroyed our entire planet. We came very close to extinction multiple times. And through all that horror, we learned how to wage war with terrible efficiency." The Admiral's expression grew distant, as if remembering something painful. "When we finally achieved peace on Earth and reached for the stars, we hoped to find something better out here. We hoped to find species that had moved beyond violence and conquest. Instead, we found empires like yours. Species that viewed peace as weakness and mercy as stupidity. So we adapted." Chun pulled up footage of the recent battle, showing it from multiple angles. Threxkull watched his fleet being destroyed again, seeing details he had missed in the chaos. The precision of the human attacks, the way they targeted specific systems without killing unnecessarily, the perfect coordination between ships. It was warfare as an art form, brutal and beautiful in its efficiency. "Your Dominion has conquered 17 systems," Chun continued. "You subjugated those species through fear and overwhelming force. You made them believe resistance was impossible. But you made a mistake when you approached human space. You gave us time to study you, time to prepare. And most importantly, you threatened us before we were ready to reveal ourselves." Threxkull felt a cold certainty settling over him. "You have been planning this for years." "We've been planning for something like this since we first left our solar system," Chun confirmed. "We knew we would eventually encounter species that saw us as prey or resources. We knew that our ideals of peace and cooperation would make us targets. So while we extended friendship with one hand, we built the capacity for absolute destruction with the other." The Admiral leaned forward, his eyes hard. "Here's what's going to happen, Commander. You and your surviving crew are going home. We're repairing your ships enough for them to make the journey to Dominion space. You will report everything that happened here. You will show them the recordings of this battle. And you will deliver our terms? Terms? Threxco asked weakly. Chen activated another display, this one showing a map with new boundaries drawn. Humanity is declaring a protection zone. All human space and all 17 of the systems your Dominion conquered are now under our protection. Any Krylithy military vessels entering these zones will be destroyed without warning. Any acts of aggression against human interests or against the species you've enslaved will result in immediate military retaliation. And those species will be offered the opportunity to join a defensive alliance under human protection. Threxco felt his scales turn white with shock. You are declaring war on the Dominion. Do you understand what that means? We have thousands of systems, millions of ships, billions of warriors. You cannot possibly fight an empire that vast? We're not declaring war, Chun said calmly. We're establishing boundaries? If your Dominion accepts these terms, there will be peace. We have no interest in conquering your territory or destroying your people. We simply will not tolerate your expansion into human space or your continued oppression of species that ask for our help. And if the Dominion refuses? Admiral Qian's expression became cold. The look of someone who had made terrible decisions before and would make them again if necessary. Then there will be war, and you will lose. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually. Because humanity has one advantage your empire cannot match. We know what it means to face extinction. We've survived ice ages, plagues, wars that consumed continents, and weapons that could have ended our species. We don't want to fight, Commander. But if we must, we will fight with everything we have, and we will not stop until the threat is eliminated. The Admiral stood, signaling the end of their conversation. Your ships will be ready for departure in 6 hours. Use that time to tend to your wounded and prepare your report. When you return to the Dominion, tell them the truth. Tell them that humanity is not prey. Tell them that we are the line that will not be crossed. And tell them that what they saw today was mercy. They won't get a second warning. The journey back to Dominion space took 14 days with the damaged Krylithy vessels limping along at reduced speeds. The humans had been true to their word, restoring enough functionality to the ships to make them spaceworthy. They had provided medical supplies, emergency rations, and even spare parts. Threxco found the generosity more disturbing than any torture would have been. It spoke of an enemy that was confident enough in their superiority to show kindness to those they had defeated. Every day of that journey, Threxco sat in his temporary command center aboard the least damaged ship and reviewed the recordings. The battle had lasted 93 seconds. 93 seconds to destroy everything he had believed about Krylithy military supremacy. He watched the human weapons tear through shields that had protected Dominion fleets for centuries. He watched ships appear and disappear with technology that made warp travel look primitive. He watched precision targeting that could only come from artificial intelligence far beyond anything the Dominion possessed. His surviving officers were quiet and withdrawn, their scales showing the pale colors of trauma and defeat. Kelrith, his second-in-command, had recovered physically, but something had broken in her spirit. She had served in the Dominion military for 3 decades, fought in a dozen campaigns, and never once doubted that the Krylithy were the superior species. Now that certainty was gone, replaced by the knowledge that they had been living in an illusion of power. "Commander," Kelrith said quietly as they approached the border of Dominion space, "what will you tell the High Council?" Threxco did not answer immediately. He had been thinking about this question since Admiral Chun released them. The truth would cause panic. It would undermine the foundation of Dominion power, which rested on the belief that no species could challenge them. But lying would be worse. If the Dominion dismissed this threat or underestimated humanity, the consequences would be catastrophic. "I will tell them everything," he said finally. "I will show them the recordings. I will give them Admiral Chin's message exactly as he delivered it. And then I will recommend that we accept the human terms." Kelroth's scales flickered with surprise. You believe we should surrender territory without a fight? The Council will call you a coward. They may execute you for such words. Better to be called a coward than to lead our people into extinction, Threxkel replied. I have seen what humans are capable of, Kelrath. That fleet that destroyed us was less than 1% of their military strength. If we go to war with them, we will lose everything. 3 days after crossing into Dominion space, they received an escort of military vessels sent by the High Council. The Dominion capital world of Krelith Prime loomed ahead, a massive planet covered in sprawling cities and military installations. Threxkel's damaged fleet was directed to a military spaceport, where officials and security forces waited. The debriefing began within hours. Threxkel stood before the High Council, 7 of the most powerful Krylothi in the Dominion, and delivered his report. He showed them the recordings. He explained the ambush that became a trap. He described the human weapons and tactics in detail. And he delivered Admiral Chen's ultimatum. The reaction was predictable. Some council members roared with outrage, their scales turning the deep red of anger. Others sat in stunned silence, processing the implications. A few looked thoughtful, calculating the costs and benefits of various responses. High Counselor Vexthril, the oldest and most influential member, finally spoke. You are telling us that a species barely 2 centuries into space travel has defeated one of our fleets without losing a single ship? That they possess technology superior to ours? That they dare to claim protection over our conquered territories? Yes, High Counselor, Threxkel replied, keeping his voice steady. And they have the military power to enforce those claims. This is unacceptable, growled Counselor Kresthek, his 4 arms gesturing wildly. We must respond with overwhelming force. Assemble the Grand Fleet. Show these humans what true military might looks like. But High Counselor Vexthril raised one clawed hand for silence. Before we commit to such a course, let us examine the evidence thoroughly. Show us everything, Fleet Commander. Leave nothing out. For 3 hours, the Council reviewed every detail. They watched the battle from multiple angles. They studied the tactical data. They listened to Admiral Chun's words. And slowly, Threxkel saw understanding dawn on their faces. This was not a species they could intimidate or easily conquer. This was a genuine threat, perhaps the first real challenge the Dominion had faced in centuries. The session was interrupted by an urgent message from the Communications Ministry. One of the junior officials burst into the chamber, his scales white with panic. High Council, we are receiving a simultaneous broadcast to every planet in Dominion space. We cannot block it. The signal is too strong and too sophisticated. Who is broadcasting? Vexthril demanded. The humans, High Counselor. It is a message to our entire population. Vexthril's eyes narrowed. Show us. The main display activated and Admiral Chun's face appeared. But this time, he was not speaking to military commanders. He was speaking directly to the people of the Dominion. And the translation protocols ensured every word was understood across hundreds of worlds. People of the Krylothi Dominion. I am Admiral Marcus Chun of the Human Defense Fleet. Your leaders have been informed of recent events. But we believe you deserve to know the truth as well. Your government sent military forces to attack what they believed was a defenseless human merchant ship. They offered terms of surrender and threatened destruction. What happened next? You have a right to see. The broadcast showed the battle in its entirety. The Krylothi ambush, the human response, the systematic destruction of the Dominion fleet. But it also showed something else. It showed human medics treating wounded Krylothi. It showed prisoners being handled with care and respect. It showed mercy being given to an enemy that had shown none. Chun's voice continued over the images. Humanity does not seek war with the Krylothi Dominion. We do not wish to conquer your worlds or harm your people. But we will not stand by while your empire continues to oppress other species. The 17 systems your government conquered through force are now under human protection. Those species have been offered alliance and the opportunity for self-determination. Any military action against them will be considered an act of war against humanity. The broadcast shifted to show representatives from several of the conquered species, speaking directly to the camera. They talked about decades of oppression, of resources taken, of populations forced into servitude. They thanked humanity for offering hope. They announced their intention to seek independence from the Dominion. The chamber erupted into chaos. Council members shouted at each other, at Threxkull, at the display showing Chun's calm face. How dare the humans interfere with internal Dominion affairs? How dare they encourage rebellion? But High Counselor Vextrel remained silent, his ancient eyes focused on the broadcast. When Chun finished speaking, the old counselor finally spoke. This is not a military challenge. This is a political attack. They are not just threatening our military power. They are undermining the foundation of our empire by offering hope to those we have conquered. Then we must crush these rebellions immediately. Kresthek insisted. Show the humans that we will not be intimidated. And when human warships appear to defend those systems? Vextrel countered. When our fleets are destroyed like Threxkull S was? What then? We mobilize more ships, and they destroy those as well. How many defeats can the Dominion endure before our own population begins to question our strength? The chamber fell silent. The terrible logic of the situation was becoming clear. The humans had not just won a battle. They had exposed the core weakness of the Dominion's power structure. Fear only worked when you were the strongest force in the galaxy. Once a stronger power appeared that fear could turn against you, what do you recommend, High Counselor? Asked one of the other council members quietly. Vextrel looked at each of them in turn. We do not have enough information to make an informed decision. The humans claim to have thousands of warships. They may be bluffing. Or they may be telling the truth. We need intelligence. We need to understand their true capabilities before we commit to war. He turned to Threxkull. You have spoken with their admiral. What is your assessment? Are they prepared for total war? Threxkull chose his words carefully. High Counselor, they have the mindset of survivors. Their history is filled with near-extinction events that they overcame through adaptability and determination. Admiral Chun was not boasting when he spoke of their military power. He was stating facts. And he was offering us a choice, one he seemed confident we would eventually make. What choice is that? Peace on their terms or obliteration on ours? 6 weeks after the battle in the Helios Expanse, 3 of the 17 conquered systems formally declared independence from the Krylethi Dominion. The Torvani people, who had been under Dominion control for 40 years, were the first to announce their freedom. They broadcast their declaration across the galaxy, citing the Human Protection Guarantee as their shield against retaliation. High Counselor Vextrel convened an emergency military session. The Grand Fleet was assembled, 500 warships representing the largest concentration of Dominion military power in decades. The message was clear: rebellion would be crushed, human protection or not. The fleet would jump to the Torvani homeworld, overwhelm any human forces present, and reclaim the system within days. Fleet Marshal Krenthix, a decorated warrior with a century of service, led the armada. He was confident in their numbers and their cause. Even if human ships were individually superior, surely 500 Krylethi warships could overwhelm 12 or even 50 human vessels. It was simple mathematics. The fleet arrived in the Torvani system expecting to find a small defensive force. Instead, they found nothing. No human ships on sensors. No defense platforms. The Torvani orbital stations were active, but they possessed no significant weapons. It seemed the humans had abandoned their promise of protection. Scan the entire system, Krenthix ordered, his confidence growing. Find any human vessels hiding in the outer planets or asteroid fields. They cannot have simply abandoned this system. For 2 hours, the Dominion fleet swept through the Torvani system, finding no trace of human military presence. Krenthix prepared to contact the Torvani government and demand their immediate surrender. The rebellion would end today, and the myth of human protection would be shattered. Then space began to ripple. Human warships phased into existence throughout the system. Not 12, not 50, 230 vessels appeared simultaneously, their arrival coordinated with impossible precision. They were positioned perfectly, surrounding the Dominion fleet in a formation that cut off every escape route, but these ships did not open fire. Instead, Admiral Chun's voice broadcast across all frequencies. Fleet Marshal Krenthix, you have entered a system under human protection with hostile intent. This is your only warning. Withdraw immediately, or your fleet will be destroyed. Krenthix stared at the tactical display, his confidence evaporating. 230 human warships, each one radiating power signatures that matched or exceeded the vessels that had destroyed Threxkel's fleet. Even outnumbered more than 2-1, his forces were clearly outmatched. But to retreat without firing a shot would be humiliating. The Dominion's reputation would be destroyed. Prepare to engage, Krenthix ordered. All ships, target the nearest human vessels. If we are to die, we die as warriors. The Dominion fleet opened fire, 500 ships unleashing their weapons simultaneously. The barrage was overwhelming, enough firepower to obliterate entire planets. But as the weapons reached the human ships, something impossible happened. The attack simply stopped, frozen in space by some kind of stasis field. Missiles hung motionless. Energy beams dissipated against invisible barriers. Not a single shot reached the human vessels. The human counter-attack was swift and precise. They did not use the gravity weapons that had destroyed Threxkel's fleet. Instead, they employed electromagnetic pulse weapons that shut down Dominion ships without destroying them. Within minutes, 300 Krylithy warships were dead in space. Their systems disabled, their crews unharmed but helpless. The remaining ships attempted to flee, but human vessels phased in front of them, blocking their escape. One by one, they were disabled and captured. The entire engagement lasted less than 10 minutes. Not a single human ship was damaged. Not a single Dominion ship escaped. Admiral Chun's face appeared on every Dominion viewscreen. Fleet Marshal Krenthix, your fleet is defeated. Your crews will be transferred to designated ships and allowed to return home. But understand this, today's engagement was a demonstration. We could have destroyed every ship in your fleet. We chose mercy. The next time Dominion forces enter a protected system, we will not be so generous. Tell your High Council that humanity's patience is not infinite. The news reached Kralith Prime within hours. 500 ships disabled without destroying them. 230 human warships that appeared from nowhere and vanished the same way. The Dominion's grand fleet, its pride and strength, reduced to floating debris in a matter of minutes. The High Council met in emergency session. But this time there was no talk of revenge or overwhelming force. The reality of the situation was undeniable. Humanity possessed military technology decades or perhaps centuries ahead of the Dominion. They had the numbers, the capability, and the will to enforce their protection zones. Continued resistance would only lead to more humiliating defeats. High Counselor Vexthorel addressed the council with the weight of his years evident in his voice. We have a choice before us. We can continue this path and watch our empire crumble as species after species breaks away under human protection. We can fight a war we cannot win and see our fleets destroyed, our worlds vulnerable, our people questioning our leadership. Or we can adapt to this new reality. You speak of surrender, Kreslik accused, though his tone lacked its previous fire. I speak of survival, Vexthorel corrected. The humans have made their position clear. They do not want our territory. They do not seek to conquer our worlds. They simply will not allow us to expand our empire through conquest. We can accept these limitations and maintain our core territories, or we can fight until we have nothing left to defend. The vote was close, but pragmatism won over pride. The Krylithy Dominion formally recognized human protection zones. They agreed to cease all military operations in the 17 contested systems. They opened diplomatic channels with Earth's government. And they began the long, painful process of accepting that they were no longer the dominant military power in their region of space. 3 months after the original ambush, Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Wandering Star. Now genuinely converted back to a standard merchant vessel, She was traveling through the Helios expanse, the same region where everything had begun. But instead of traveling alone, she was escorting a convoy of ships from the newly liberated Torvani people. The Torvani were establishing trade routes, connecting with other species, building the infrastructure of a free society. Similar convoys traveled from the other liberated systems. The galaxy was changing, not through conquest but through protection. Humanity had offered an alternative to empire, and species across the region were accepting it. Vasquez watched the stars slide past on her view screen and thought about the journey that had brought them here. Humanity had left Earth hoping to find peace among the stars, hoping to meet species that shared their values of cooperation and mutual respect. Instead, they had found empires built on subjugation and fear. They had found species that viewed kindness as weakness and diplomacy as surrender. So humanity had adapted. They had taken the hard lessons of their own bloody history and applied them to the stars. They had built a military force powerful enough to enforce peace, strong enough to protect the weak, and disciplined enough to show mercy to defeated enemies. They had become exactly what the galaxy needed, even if it meant becoming something they never wanted to be. "Captain," her communications officer called out, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Fleet Command." "Put it through," Vasquez replied. Admiral Chun's face appeared on her screen. He looked tired but satisfied. "Captain Vasquez, I wanted to personally thank you for your service. The mission you volunteered for was dangerous, and you performed it perfectly. Because of your courage, we were able to establish the evidence we needed to justify our actions." "Thank you, Admiral," Vasquez said. "Though I have to admit, those were the longest 3 months of my life, waiting for someone to take the bait." Chun smiled slightly. "Your patience was rewarded. The Dominion has agreed to our terms. The 17 systems are free, and other species in the region are reaching out to us, asking for protection from their own would-be conquerors. The galaxy is learning that humanity is not prey. Are we prepared for what comes next?" Vasquez asked. "Protecting 17 systems is one thing, but if more species ask for our help, we could find ourselves stretched very thin." "We're building more ships," Chun replied, "training more crews, establishing more alliances, and we're making it clear that our protection comes with expectations. We won't fight wars for species that won't defend themselves. We won't enable dependency. We offer partnership, not domination." Vasquez nodded. "A better model than the Dominion?" "We hope so," Chun said. "We hope to show the galaxy that strength doesn't have to mean conquest, that power can be used to protect rather than control. It won't be easy. There will be other empires, other threats. But at least now we know we can handle them." The transmission ended, and Vasquez returned her attention to the convoy. The Torvani ships were old and outdated, built during their time under Dominion control. But their crews were enthusiastic and hopeful, building toward a future they had never thought possible. She thought about the Krylothy fleet commander who had ambushed her ship.